Good afternoon and welcome back to the UINA event here in Paris. We are here in the afternoon session and we are in the fourth panel discussion, and the subject is where we are talking about the coming hour about monitoring. Here together, I am here with my four panelists, but first let me introduce myself. My name is Antoine van der Sijs. I'm one of the founders and board members of UINA, and I'm working for the consultancy company in the Netherlands called Strict. And today we will have here the discussion with my four panelists. I will introduce them first shortly, and after the introduction they will introduce themselves with the help of also some support of some slides. Here next to me is Jean-François from Anritsu. Next to him is Jalal from IBWave. And the third person is Xavier from SmartVisor. And the last person is Marco from VIAV Solutions. For the introduction of each person, we have now the possibility to share also some slides with you. And the first one I'm giving the word is Jean-François. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks Antoine. So, hi everyone. So I'm Jean-François Dion. I'm in Anritsu since a bit more than 1 year. I've got nearly 30 years of experience in the ICT services, infrastructure, and enterprise. So I know quite well what it's all about when it comes to the enterprise needs. If you want to go to the first slide, please. Yeah, so very quickly, who is Anritsu? It's a company which is born with the telecommunication market, meaning born in Japan 130 years ago, with a big focus on test, measurement, and monitoring solution on both wired infrastructure, wireless, optical. Personally, I'm belonging to the service assurance division, with objective is to serve initially the telcos in order to provide them some network visibility, monitoring, and ensuring that all their infrastructure are up and running at the level they expect. So today we cover a bit more than 60 customers in the telco world. And I've been especially joining Anritsu in order to expand and to answer to the strategic direction taken from the headquarters to expand this 130 years of experience in the telco world within the enterprise market. What we see is that all that we have seen happening over the years in telcos is somewhere up to a certain level replicated in the enterprise world, and it's our objective to capitalize on this. So today, what do we see on the market? In fact, it's not only related to private network, but there's a kind of dilemma existing within the enterprise who are willing to, or planning to deploy those networks. On one side, most of them deploy private networks to ensure that some business or mission critical applications will have the right level of connectivity that is not today delivered by what they already have in their infrastructure. So those mission critical applications are requiring some predictable, some stable performance. Not all the time some very big performance, but to have them stable and up and running. Of course, the criticality of those networks is also coming with some TCO and financial constraints consideration that have to be taken into consideration when we realize that those networks are most of the time not a million of users. And on the other side, you've got all the impact of deploying those new networks on some quite not emerging, but still in innovation and maturation phase technologies, meaning that you have to rely on maybe a level of standardization that is not always the one that they used to have in the enterprise networking world. Technological ecosystem is still very diverse, evolutive, and fragmented. And what we see, especially when it comes to the monitoring aspect, is that more or less there are no standard existing on the market, and we think that it's one of the big challenges that we all around the table and around the industry have to address to make those to solve this dilemma between the criticality and the innovation.
Thank you very much, Jean-François. And now I want to hand over the word to Jalal. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Antoine. My name is Jalal Berahu. I'm a Market Development Director at IBWave. So just to give a quick introduction about IBWave, we're a company specializing in software for indoor, in-campus type environments, doing Wi-Fi, cellular networks. Our experience historically has been a lot with the carriers and MNOs, but we are moving more and more into the enterprise as we see the rise in private networks and mission-critical network deployments. We're working with a lot of customers in the mining vertical, like manufacturing, logistics. There are a lot of commonalities between them. There's a lot of demand for video, data, voice, enhanced coverage, automation. I remember a little while ago when we had these sessions, a lot of the time the discussion was around Wi-Fi versus private 5G or 4G. Now it's good that we're moving past that point. We're talking about other aspects like monitoring, for example, which means that the market is definitely growing. At least that's like the way we see it at IBWave. And when we work with customers, there's a lot of demand for providing connectivity for the whether it's the employees, whether it's IoT devices, the tenants, what kind of services do we have to provide. So we see definitely flawless connectivity that needs to support the mission-critical systems. What we advise our customers on a regular basis when it comes to private networks is really the unified lifecycle approach. A lot of the people in the industry, they're talking about digital twin, which is digitizing the site information so that everybody in the ecosystem, they have access to that information at any given time. So we have a process that we put in place where we walk our customers through how they create the project from the start, how they create the 3D model in our design and having that digital twin copy, and then doing a site survey to evaluate the network, making sure they optimize and deploy the network, and then after that validating and moving to maintenance. And that's really, when we look at monitoring, it's not at the end of the cycle, it's usually from the start all the way to the finish, and then you have to maintain that network over time. In the next slide, what we have working with our customers is defining the KPIs. How do we do monitoring from an RF perspective? We specialize in RF, of course. I'm not going to talk about security and device encryption authentication. That's not my expertise, but it's more on the RF part of it. How do we track the KPIs for like LTE, 5G, Wi-Fi, any network available within the premises? How do we analyze the frequencies and the interference? What kind of KPIs do we have to keep track of? And then providing accurate documentation throughout the process. So we want to make sure we have accurate documentation, we have the as-built documents. Every time we do a survey, we do any update on site, we have all that information documented, accessed by anybody within the venue or within the ecosystem. And we have developed, of course, software, but also hardware on how we can do survey measurements for collection mode, how we do spectrum analyzer to analyze the interference. And again, this is part of the solution for any type of in-building private network or campus type environment for any of the verticals that I mentioned before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jalal. And the next person who's going to introduce himself is Xavier. And,
yes, yeah, okay. Hello everybody, Xavier Frère. I am the CTO of SmartVisor. Few words about SmartVisor, founded 10 years ago, headquartered in France and some marketing and sales office in UK. And we are combining a unique expertise between testing and telecoms and empowering our customers with some device-based automation to measure QoE, QS. Widely used, very flexible, very versatile use casing from all IVVQ testing phases up to active probing and network probing, which are key for network monitoring today. our customer base from network operators, device manufacturers, service usage like railways, gas, so all industries, and of course regulators. And now a few words in the next slide. So sorry, thank you, Antoine. Basically, we do think that getting some data from real devices is definitely key, and we want to have a very fast, what we call the DCC process. Basically, it's detection. So how to detect the issues, how to detect trends, how to detect any even weak signals. Then we need to confirm. So on our props on devices are able to confirm that issues are really there. This is fully controlled by the central monitoring system that from our suppliers, like Anritu, for instance, and confirm that when you have an issue which is solved by the central monitoring system, the devices will help as well to confirm that the issue has been solved. So this DCC loop with real devices will be definitely the fastest as possible, where we have some business critical use cases and mission critical use cases. So getting this fastest loop is our key daily work.
Okay, thank you very much, Kavir. And then our last panelist for today is Marco. Marco, please introduce yourself.
Marco Bussi, Business Development of Viavi Solutions. I think we can skip to the next one already because it was just an introductory. Okay, so Viavi may be familiar with other names for those of you who are already new names like JDSU Acterna or Agilent, part of Agilent, or Banter Golterman. Our story is slightly different. We were used to be two companies in the railway market, Comtess Wireless and Expandium, which were acquired 2020-2022 by Viavi. So we are now part of the portfolio. And business unit was created specifically for private networks, railways, and mission critical. So we have more or less 20-something, 20-ish year experience in monitoring railways. And I mean, both the telecommunication subsystem, but also the other operational subsystem, like the train control system and part of the onboard. Railways are a good example of what a private network is, because their core business is not providing services to users. Their core business is executing their mission. So if it's a port authority, it's moving containers. If it's a railway, it's moving trains and so on. And so they are focused on this activity. And for this reason, we focused on what was really their core business, and we provided KPIs and all the metrics which were relevant for their business. And in this sense, we notice a lot of difference from standard MNOs. First of all, the need for monitoring and testing is slightly different because it must be oriented to their core business. Also, these networks are treated in a different way. They operate in a different way. Just to give an example, we have a situation in northern Sweden where there is one call per week in some part of the network, which means you can't use the metrics and the statistics you're using for mobile network operators because you don't have enough traffic. So you need a different approach to troubleshoot these problems. Further, you need to understand what's going on at a transaction level, because every transaction is including not only the telecom network, but also the other subsystems. And it's a complex interplay between all these subsystems that if the system is working already. And we're bringing this expertise in other environments like port authorities, airports, metropolitan transportation, and so on. Another problem is that you need to have artificial traffic generation. So you need to have something which can, at the same time, collect information, but also generate a synthetic traffic in the same way the subsystems in the network are operating. And this is important because, as mentioned before, there isn't a lot of equipment using the network, and especially during rollout phase, or if you need to test consistently something, you need something like that. Finally, we've been working, you see them at the bottom left of the slide, with all standardization body to help defining these KPIs and metrics which are peculiar of the specific business this organization are operating on. So if we go to the next slide, we can see an example. Oh, sorry, I think one slide.
Was the last one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, doesn't matter. The important thing is also on the upper right hand, the fact that we need to test both the two endpoints. So the user perspective is providing some information. You can see in the left part in the trains, simplifying the trains. In the right hand side, there is the monitoring part. It's a combination of the two which is providing the full picture. In port authorities can be, for instance, cranes, can be robot moving containers, can be the personnel, and so on. Another point important is what do you mean by mission critical? It must be specifying metrics which are peculiar of the service you want to create to make mission critical. So actually, this is our expertise. We have another feature which is the completeness of our solution. So we do active testing, passive testing, fiber optic, and cybersecurity, because the organization we are targeting are organizations who are typically smaller than mobile operators, so they can't be split into many departments. They can all take into consideration all these complex tasks into a fragmented environment. So they need an umbrella solution to be able to analyze all these problems and find a solution. One example is, for instance, I've got a fault. Is it an intrusion, or is it simply a subsystem which is failing? And having a single platform which can provide you this type of information is extremely important and crucial. We've seen this in the railways. We are currently seeing it in metropolitan transportation and in other customers we are currently targeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. And so we are here with 4 different experts and from 4 different companies. When we look at private networks, private broadband networks, 4G or 5G, we see that most companies who are looking at, let's say, connectivity, they are looking at, okay, what alternatives are we can we choose of? And the companies or organizations who decided to implement a private network, they focus on most cases on the connectivity part. But what I hear here is that it is more about than about connectivity, and maybe let's say have a discussion about, let's say, what is monitoring about. Where do you start, Jean-François, when you talk about monitoring and private networks? What is the first step you would advise your customers to do?
Well, the first advice is that you wouldn't imagine in your personal life to buy a fantastic super speed and efficient car without having the right cockpit information, giving you the right level of visibility on what's happening and how is it working based on the specification that you plan. I think that we have to act in the same manner for networks. To be clear, today I think that there are a lot of implementation where monitoring is considered, and it used to be the same in the past with IP network, by the way. It's always considered as the very last part of the implementation project. It's always arriving when budget have been over-exceeded in the build phase. So you always pass the monitoring as the, let's see if we can do it. And I think it's an issue because basically those networks are, as said in the intro, are super critical and relying on new kind of technology, new kind of standards. Yeah, they are not manageable as the IP enterprise network. And I think the biggest mistake that could be made is, let's consider I'm operating multi-thousand Ethernet or Wi-Fi networks in Sears, so it will be super easy to manage my private network that I will implement. It's not the case. It needs very specific skills that are quite complicated to attract and to retain. We see a big skill shortage on the market. So the advice will be, first, don't consider network monitoring as the last part of the project that can be optional. The other thing is that it's not a technical project. When it comes to monitoring a network, it's not just about delivering metrics on how the infrastructure is behaving. The KPI you have to expose, and that makes it quite a bit tricky because it's case by case, project by project that you need to have some discussion together with both the end customers and their businesses to check what is critical for you. Maybe something that is important for a factory manager, it's not the same than what's important for someone who is driving a stock exchange or a warehouse. So there's the ability to customize the KPI that you will expose and the way you monitor is very key, because what I see in a lot of cases, it's okay, we have some nice tools that have been installed, but at the end of the day, what they expose to us is not relevant in my daily life of network services operator. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, and it's also the reason why the position of SmartVisor, which we announced a partnership with yesterday, by the way, is key, is that those private networks have to be from the start seen in an end-to-end monitoring perspective and not in a siloed way as it's too often the case today, meaning it's not because you have the RAN that is up and running, it's not because you have the core that is up and running, that all your end users will have the right level of SLA and of service. So really this warning, it's a specific techno, it's one thing, and the end-to-end aspect is the other key stuff, and also the multiplicity of the vendors and of the actors makes it as tricky as it was 20 years ago in the enterprise. So that's where it has to be considered as full part of the project from the start.
Okay, so end-to-end is actually what you're telling is about where monitoring actually starts. It's not only on the connectivity part, but looking to the whole chain of different components and different, let's say, also most cases, different suppliers providing parts of the chain. But looking at, let's say, because when you start to implement a private network, it starts with, okay, where is coverage and where is not, where is coverage needed, and how do you monitor that? Can you give us some example how IBwave is managing that, Jalal?
Yeah, thank you, Antoine. So I think going back to what Jean-François mentioned, so we're talking about monitoring. Again, I think there is a monitoring from an IT perspective, maybe, and then there is the RF portion. So with IBwave, when we work with our customers, we want to make sure that when they're planning the network, they plan it in the most optimal way, providing the best coverage possible, the best capacity scenario. What happens in a lot of the private networks, and just to give an example of a mining use case, mining sites, they change all the time. You always have new tunnels being built, and when you plan the network, you have to make sure that you take all of that into account. And when you're making changes inside the site or the venue, you would like to understand how your network will support the changes. If you need to change the network layout, how the performance, the capacity, the traffic, all of that is going to play a role in the site. So when we're talking about monitoring from an RF perspective, we want to make sure that the current site is fully covered, and we're meeting the KPIs of the coverage and capacity, but also maintaining that coverage and using it as a benchmark in the future, making sure that the coverage and capacity keeps the standard in the long term of the site is also maintained. So from an RF perspective, we're talking about the post-install survey. When you deploy the network, you do a post-install to make sure that your network is meeting all the KPIs, but also having maintenance windows where you do that survey to make sure that the RF parameters are always performing according to your plan.
Okay, thank you very much. And so looking at, let's say, the monitoring part, I hear the word KPI, so key performance indicators. Key performance indicators a lot when you talk about monitoring. And when you look from an end-to-end perspective, let's say business, let's say KPIs are coming then around the corner, and talk about that type of KPIs. Xavier, can you tell us a bit more about where you start there with, let's say, from the business look at end-to-end, and then in the end to, let's say, how do you implement a monitoring solution?
Yeah, okay, first of all, I do agree, of course, with what Jean-François said about getting a holistic approach using devices and full props from the network standpoint. And it will all start with which services do you want to handle on your network. And then you will need to be able to replicate, to stimulate those services, and it can only be happen from device standpoint, where it will be the only place where you can catch the true quality of experience. And maybe surprisingly today, we have lots of requests about voice quality, because voice is still one of the key usage. And of course, it moves from cellular to all IP-based OTTs, especially for mission critical. So getting the right mouse, getting the right latency, along with, of course, performance and network coverage is maybe the KPI for which currently we have the main request when it goes to private networks.
Okay, so let's say voice. When I hear, let's say, mission critical, and you ask with customers about what is really mission critical, then I hear in most cases that voice is still, let's say, very mission critical. And let's say, besides all the different systems behind applications, so we also see that voice is still there as a mission critical example.
Yeah, basically, voice will be the baseline. Then they will move in setting up some new services like video calls, any kind of emergency services. But the first way to convince the end user to swap from like Tetra-based systems to cellular-based, fully managed network is the fact that at least they can do the same way and have some secured way to place some critical calls.
And talking about, let's say, technology change from small, let's say, narrowband solution to broadband solution, is that also your experience that the monitoring part was also in that solution already mandatory, or how do you see that?
Yeah, it will come. It will come more and more, because of course the main topic about switching to cellular-based network is to get the full capacity of the 5G. So broadband capacity will be key, as well latency, of course. We all talk about latency because it's one of the key words about 5G, and it's a key word about these mission-critical services. So latency is also another key KPI to catch.
Thank you. Now, Marco, you already told us something about, let's say, use cases, and you have already, let's say, since 2005, you are there, and you have already a long time of experience and a long history. Looking, because we are here for the 4G, 5G, let's say, broadband solutions, which are, let's say, from the past few years. What use cases can you explain where monitoring is, let's say, important to implement in that use case?
Well, first of all, every market, since we were discussing previously that every vertical has its own metrics because it has a different business. Every use case will be different depending on there are multiple use cases depending on the vertical you're targeting. For instance, in PERT, we were been working with PERT and Post Authority. The most critical is a train control system. And it's safety critical, believe me, that's safety critical. It's really mission critical, that one, because the people's lives are at stake. So it's important that, and there latency and jitter, but also error-free transmission is important. Because if you have errors, it means you're adding latency to a full datagram. Voice is important as well. We were in Chicago, and there's a new kind of voice. Since there's a need for automation using AI, policemen in cars and first responders will need to send commands using AI, and this AI should recognize these commands. So there's a new trend to measure quality of service of voice for AI. This is an example, quite to the extent, but quite to the limit. But actually, it brings the idea that and I agree with my previous colleagues that there is a need to be adaptable to this, but to leverage the expertise you have from the past. But I think that also the crane, as an example, in port authorities or in airports can be cameras, video cameras, but there you got latency as well, because if you're moving something with a crane, you need that the stream of data which is reaching the monitor of the user is not delayed, otherwise you will see what happened 10 seconds ago. It's an extreme, of course, but it provides you an idea. And if he has to react, also the command system must send commands properly. So what we focused were, during the last 20 years, was talking to authorities how to specify these metrics. You don't need to have 300, 400 parameters like we used to have in mobile network, but you need to focus on the few really important parameters which are business critical and sometimes human being critical.
Yeah, thank you. Now, interesting what you talk when you talk about AI. We hear a lot about AI, let's say, lately, and let's say that is one of the subjects is also, let's say, entering, I think, in our world. Yeah, can you tell, let's say, the older person, for instance, what AI can be in monitoring? Xavier, can you?
Yeah, of course, for us, at least from a device standpoint, once more I will be back to device standpoint. What is important as well is that you need for AI, you need as well to train the models. You need to get them data. The most data you will get from various targets and from various sources. Your model should continuously evolve, and so data is key. Getting the data is key. So monitoring is key, and as well the key things from the device standpoint is that we can also make sure they will also generate some abnormal cases, because it's very good to monitor just normal cases, but what you need to be sure is that you will detect the abnormal cases in the right time. So for us, it's a way getting some devices generating some data is a way to train the models.
Okay, thank you. And Jean-François, what is AI doing in the solutions you know?
In fact, using AI to support the operation phases is already something that is in the reality for the telco operator that we are working with. As Xavier said, and I think it's the basic, AI does not work if you don't have the variable volume of data to extract and identify the weak signals and correlate. So the first thing, you can imagine a lot of things in the enterprise network using AI by having this end-to-end network analysis and gathering data from devices, from the RAN, from the core, and identifying in this big data repository some weak signals, and have the algorithm correlating by themselves to identify and helping either solving the root cause or identifying some issues in a minority report way of working before they arrive. But this is, I would say, this is the ultimate objective. If you want to come to this, make this a reality, the basic first step is let's centralize and normalize all the potential data that can be of interest to apply algorithm on. And it's in our plan, because as I said, we are working on we have some applications doing this for our application stack, and that is used for the telcos. And we really, it's still an emerging topic, this end-to-end monitoring in the private network area, but we are quite confident that we'll be able to also apply the same model into those data repository that we are going to build for enterprise, and step by step have some specific algorithm helping to solve this complex end-to-end. And I would add also back to what Xavier said, it's not only about monitoring. When you talk end-to-end, it's not infrastructure. You have also, and I think that Viavi is also in the same mindset, you have also to involve some non-network data sources, like, by example, those key push-to-talk subsystems that are sometimes deployed in a very specific standalone manner. It's not about managing them. It's about getting from them what data they are able to export put them in the same data model than the one that we are working with for the network and for the devices. And then I think we will start having some quite interesting stories to tell to enterprise in, guys, let's make it easier for you when you have because at the end of the day, it's all about user experience and satisfaction. When you have an end user who says the application is not working or the voice quality is not good, you won't have the magic button will just pop up and say it's coming from this part, but at least we'll be able to quite simply and quickly eliminate the potential non-viable root causes and focus on where the effort of your network operation expert on the potential source of the issue. And I think it's one part. And the other part also, here we are talking about AI to support human being operating and solving the issue. The step after, it's using AI to potentially auto-correct the issues and send adapt the way the system is monitored and potentially apply some changes in the system parameter. It's the ultimate steps. There are some telcos that are already experimenting this, but it can be also seen as in the coming years as a potential use of AI in self-healing networks.
Okay, and talking about AI and let's say radio coverage and will AI replace, let's say, the human being and the human knowledge in, let's say, using tools and AI can do the rest? Jalal, what is your opinion about that?
I don't see AI replacing the human, to be honest. I think it's going to be more helping them achieve better results a lot faster. Now for us at IBwave, at least when we hear about AI, it doesn't have to do a lot with monitoring, but it's more about automating the process of doing the design, the plan, making sure you have the best network available. So AI and machine learning for us has to do more with the planning and deploying the network rather than on the maintenance portion of things. So we are looking at AI as well, but more from the RF planning perspective.
Also to improve your tools to predict, let's say, the radio coverage in a better way than in different circumstances, I assume.
Correct. It has to do with the project lifecycle that I showed, whether it's creating the digital twin model of the venue, whether it's running the predictions with the optimal coverage. But it's again, like I mentioned, it's more about helping the user achieve better results rather than replacing the user at the end.
Okay, thank you. Now, good discussion that we have here. Do we miss something at the moment about, let's say, monitoring and which, let's say, our audience is needing to know?
I think that following this AI discussion, but connecting to what we were saying before, 20 years ago, we were forced to reverse the logic. So rather than going to the radio core and all the other stuff and go up and see what was the impact, we reversed it and we started from business case. You have to monitor all the subsystems of the business case, and then if it's radio and so on. So AI can be used to track this point, and this is the way it's working in railways, where we have systems which are spanning across multiple, because at the end of the day, it's important that the train doesn't stop. Then you drill down in the problem. And radio can be one of the problems, but can be also something different. Can be the cranes, can be in the ports authorities, can be something different. So, and it can be a fault caused by a malicious injection and so on. So the idea is that AI should be able to tell you, and this is what we are using in cybersecurity, to understand if it's a malicious code, or it's an intrusion attempt, or if it's a fault. We have to always to recall that a vulnerability exploitment is simply a way of reversing the statistics of a failure. A failure is something which in a safety critical system is 1 to minus 12 exponential of minus 12 probability. An hacker will just reverse the statistic, make it extremely probable. So ideally, the best AI system should be the one that you buy the system and you got the board, which is happy, the bank account of the manager automatically rise or double. But since we are not yet there, I think we can stop in the midway, somehow trying to make life easier for our customers. This is what we are aiming for, at least.
Thank you. I'm looking to, let's say, the audience. Do we have any questions? One question from Matasim Melhem. How privacy would be adhered in this case? How do we privacy arrange? Can you, who's
Yeah.
can give his response on that?
Yes. Okay. Maybe this is related to a device usage, and it could be seen as a threat. But because every time we talk about monitoring device usage, there is this question about privacy, which pops up, which is obvious. In the case of props, we need to know that we are taking of when we are talking about active probing, it means that those devices will be dedicated and not the end user devices. And then there is a second, and those dedicated props are really key to be the first line of defense. They should be some scouts in the network, but they will not be in the hands of anybody. And of course, there is this crowdsourcing, because crowdsourcing is now well known for every kind of network, but they will not be that much involved into this monitoring. It gives more broader set of data, more for monthly, yearly usage, and they will not be that much involved into overall monitoring or detection of issues.
I think the let's say the device part is of course a part of privacy, because also let's say there are privacy laws that you have to obey, so that's part.
Yeah.
But what I see now is that privacy was more about 5G slicing, so more.
Oh, okay.
Can someone answer this one?
Yeah, maybe if we start introducing the 5G slicing in a private network to a private network audience, it means that we may switch to a not that fully private approach and a virtual private hosted on shared cores delivered by telco. And here you are joining some it's back to how do the telcos providing 5G slicing services to enterprise ensure that the way they monitor it and they implement it is fully contained and siloed. And here there are some we start having some discussion with telco in terms of how the data are structured, how they can ensure that all that is consolidated into one system coming from one, let's say, sub-network, because we talk about 5G slicing, it could be the same with some sub-APN or this kind of implementation. So it's absolutely part of the way those monitoring systems are designed, and maybe even more from the start with telco, who are already used to work, for example, for the roaming use cases with some different data sets coming from different end customers, and that hopefully when you do some roaming, you don't want your roaming data to be seen by your competitors in the same geography. So, but it's part of a wider data privacy strategy that is implemented more at telco level.
Thank you. And looking at, let's say, 5G slicing is also, let's say, do everyone, somebody of you ever already experienced in monitoring and 5G slicing in MNO, let's say, solutions at the moment, or is that still too early and still a way to go? I see yes or no.
For us, it's slightly too early. We need to see some real projects that can be accessible from the field. So currently, we are not involved into this kind of projects.
Okay, so the private networks are there, but private networks via a slice of an MNO is not a common, let's say, solution at the moment.
Yeah, there are some discussions about how this will be implemented, whether it's still the right way to do, or whether they can do some other. So basically, it's at least for us, it's too early.
Okay, and Marco, what do you think?
Well, the requirements we are having are for, well, imagine a railway operator or a government network. They have strong concerns of networks, and for this reason, we are quite pressured by these requirements. The point at the moment is that we haven't come across a 5G slicing project at the moment. They want to keep everything in their silos. especially for government networks. Also, railways are safety critical. They don't want, first of all, they want to be sure no one gets in. before something going out, it is better no one gets in. And that's why we put in place, we have some requirement and certification to pass through. I'm not fit for that because we have a team dedicated to this, but it's really critical, that part. Also, the most important thing is no one gets in.
Yeah.
Because then exfiltration, data filtration is something which can be done and blah, blah, blah. So.
It's also, let's say, what we see is that, let's say, talking about the discussion about are you going on a public network with a slice of a public MNO or of a private network, then is the control part, let's say, an interesting part to, let's say, which is on the discussion table of the decision makers.
Yes.
And there is also then, when it is about mission critical, then of course there is a business case, but let's say it is a different business case than when it is less critical.
Yeah.
If I could add, Antoine, just on that, I think, at least from an IBWave perspective, what I've seen, I haven't seen MNOs using 5G slicing, but I've seen MNOs entering the private network by providing that either as service or providing the enterprises with a private network. Yeah. So even as far as I'm concerned, the operators are going after the enterprise by providing the private network as a service, but I haven't seen 5G slicing either.
Okay. If I may add, we as Anouilh2, as you saw in the intro, we have a lot of telcos as customer, and we start having some specific requests on guys. We now have some large enterprise customer using our public or virtual private network, and they need some specific services. They need some specific visibility. The way you monitor the usage, the kind of reporting, the kind of added services that you have to deliver to them is not the same as the one that you build usually for in a B2C environment. But we start having the same reflection on how can we enrich the data. It's always back to data and how you monetize and you bring value into it. How can we complete the data that are extracted from the infrastructure itself with data that are more business relevant and like the one that the SmartVisor agent could provide, by example, in order for the MNO to not only see enterprise customer as a market segment with a specific architecture and contractual model, but also as a market segment having some specific needs that they have to address. So we start having some requests coming from telcos saying, guys, we have a virtual network for this or this or this customer. Can you need to help us to build a new way of using what we have and to complement it with additional insight in order to build new. It's about monetizing and bringing new services in front of those clients. So it's a trend, I think, and 5G slicing will be just a subset. But here we are a bit moving away from the private network discussion, but I think this end-to-end monitoring is also something that whatever the mean in the middle, the enterprise will ask to their provider, maybe providing private or hybrid networks.
Thank you. Marco, again.
Yeah, there is one point. From what we see, 5G will be the bearer of services. On top of that will be MCPTT, MCX. So actually, the question for mission critical service will be in case 5G is just a private network, okay, the question is relevant. Otherwise, the question should be how federated systems can guarantee privacy among MCPTT platforms. Because in case you got fire brigade, you got police, you got industrial automation, you got first responder, you got even, we've been talking to the pharma industry as well, because one of the best kept secret is the way the clinical trials are performed, and it's safe, and it's really sensitive, critical, and the only way to guarantee this is having high security encryption keys guaranteed by MCPTT. So actually, I think this is one of the answers is actually privacy is guaranteed by adding a layer on top of that, which we see in railways, in urban transportation, and so on.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are coming now to the end of this session, and what we have learned today is that monitoring is about not only, let's say, monitoring the mobile network, but actually monitoring end-to-end. And looking from that perspective, when it is really critical and even mission critical, then we started with, let's say, the part of is it a myth? Actually, the answer, it is a must, and it is a must that you, at the moment, you are going to think about a private network, that monitoring is also part of, let's say, going that way, and also have the conclusion that, okay, we need it, and we have to implement it also. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
quoi qui part dans le stream? T'as quelque chose qui part dans le stream là?
On a un fond, ouais.
Bon, je démute.
Silence, s'il vous plaît. C'est bon.
Okay, mic should be active. Yep. Welcome everybody to the 5th session of today. We're now heading for sessions 5 and 6, which will be a bit of a change relative to what you've seen this morning and this afternoon. This morning was very much about network, technology, standards, and the session we just had was about service assurance. What quality of service do I get from a network? The next 2 sessions will be about use cases, end users. So in this session, we will have 2 actual end users who already deploy private networks. So that ought to make it very lively for you. So that's one change relative to the previous sessions. And the other changes, as we noticed over lunch, is that none of us wears a suit. So this will be the first suitless presentation. Other than that, let me start by introducing myself and the speakers. I am Koen Miolet, which is a very Dutch name. I am a consultant, like Antoine in the previous session. And I'm one of the founders and the current secretary of the association. And of course, Christian's still the founder. With me, I have a very interesting panel with solely focus on end user cases, use cases. So in this chair, but not present here in Paris, but online, is Willem Blom. Willem is Spectrum Manager from the Airport of Amsterdam. Airport of Amsterdam is the 3rd or 4th largest airport in Europe and has a Spectrum Manager and has had so for quite a while. So Willem will tell you about what they're doing at the Airport of Amsterdam. And hopefully Willem is online within minutes, because otherwise we have an issue, but he should be. Then in the next chair, virtually, we have Jeffrey, and I know Jeffrey is already online, he's right there. Jeffrey is Public Communications and Innovation Manager at the Port of Rotterdam. Needless to remind you guys that Port of Rotterdam is still the largest port of Europe and competes with Hamburg and Antwerp. So those are the 3 largest ports in Europe. And Port of Rotterdam is, of course, engaging on a private wireless strategy. Then we have from Ireland, Rory O'Toole. A name could not be more Irish than O'Toole, I guess, but anyway, welcome Rory from Dublin. Druid is a core vendor, and well, we have a lot of core vendors on the panel. Obvious is also a core vendor, and this morning we had Attocore and Atonet, so we have a lot of core players on the team, which is good. Rory will inform us about, well, the many cases you've already built in private wireless and in main ports, and you'll articulate a couple of airport cases. And then with Boris from Obvious, who is yet another core provider from France, we will widen the scope of this session a bit by looking not only at ports and main ports, but looking at the wider logistics and transport automation case. And he will have a couple of, well, more white collar kind of cases. And then after this, there'll be another session again on use cases. Let me introduce. It used to click the other minute. It clicked just seconds ago. Do I have to point at something? Yeah, there it is. Okay, be patient. This is a bit of statistics to introduce both of our panels. This is statistic from the GSA, the Global Supplier Association, not the GSMA, but the GSA, and they produce statistics on private networks. This is a fairly old chart. The number at the top says 889. It already is. You can see at the right-hand bottom, it stands at over 1,400 private networks already. But it's not the absolute number what I want to use this picture for. I use this picture for the distribution. Here, you see manufacture. Manufacture, undisputed, is the largest use case area, the largest vertical for private networks. Has been and still is. Which is why Peter, in a minute, will run a session on private networks in utility, mining, and industry. But these verticals, the red blocks here, are seaports and maritime, airports, and logistics. If you add these 3 up, you're looking at the 2nd or 3rd largest vertical, also deploying private wireless networks. So in the next 2 sessions, we'll be addressing both of these very important verticals. Now, to zoom in on main ports, and a lot of the presentation will be about main ports. Main ports, by the way, is airports and seaports, both of them. Here is a picture Here should be a picture. This is just Northwestern Europe. In blue, you have airport cases. In green, you have seaport cases. All of these, and I'm not going to go through them one by one, have already, yes, Jeffrey, take a closer look. You're on it. All of these are cases of actual deployments of private networks in airports and seaports. So main ports as a market is not academic, it's happening, it's for real. All of these people have implemented networks to some extent. In white, you can see the ones that we're going to address in this panel, namely the ones in Holland. So Schiphol Airport is there. In red, I should say. And in Rotterdam, already ACT, European Container Terminal, and RWG, Rotterdam World Gateway, have up and running networks. So private wireless in main ports is real. It's happening as we speak. And this is one small transition picture of the network that is here at Paris Charles de Gaulle. So if there would be a window here, which there isn't, you would be looking at Roissy. And at Roissy, they deploy a very large private LTE network that Christian, by the way, our chairperson, where is he? No, not there, has helped establishing. Huge network, 100 base stations, 2 cores, 1 shared RAN, and it serves all operational processes. So that is a case of an airport. And here I wanted to hand over to Willem Blom, who is the Spectrum Manager at Amsterdam Airport. And I wonder whether he's online. Comment? Il n'est pas là. OK, on continue avec Jeffrey et peut-être plus tard. So, Jeffrey, you're on. Willem is not there yet. Hopefully he joins, and then he can tell us about the plans at Amsterdam. He's got a nice presentation about that. Floor is yours to explain to us what is happening in the port of Rotterdam.
Sure, of course. First, a test if you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you well.
Yeah, I hear myself as well, but that's a minor detail.
And I think I have to click, thanks. So you tell me when to click.
Yeah, maybe just now because I see myself twice.
Twice, hey.
All right.
We're looking at a sheet that says 5G connectivity.
That's good. Probably we can go already to the next one. So, my name is Jeff van Noordwijk. I'm Public Affairs Coordinator for the digital domain of the Port of Rotterdam, and I'm also part of the 5G connectivity team. First of all, I'm sorry that I'm not being able to join you in person, but however, I will be there next week when we have a special 5G conference in London. So if you want to meet me there, then you can. But I will try to tell you something about the current state of affairs of the 5G connectivity in the port. A port, by the way, which stretches out for more than 42 kilometers, with segments diverging from container terminals, of course, deep sea container terminals, refining cluster, offshore, biorefinery, break bulk, project cargo, everything is there. So that makes a very diverse port with very diverse customers, of course. Here you see a very simple picture of some activities in the port that are increasingly manifesting themselves in the port area. We see some new technologies that often make existing processes more efficient. For example, you see smart bollards, sensors in the quays or in the waterways, allowing, for example, for predictive maintenance, drones, of course, autonomous transport, remote controlled cranes. So that's quite a combination of new technology. That combination of technology, of course, needs the mobile connectivity. That's why we are here, of course. And that together with the policy context regarding the 3.5 gigahertz frequency band has led to the situation that we as a port authority have become actively involved in the policy discussion. So this was like 3 or 4 years ago. From that moment on, it became clear for us that we need to organize ourselves on this topic and to become vocal. And it's, by the way, important to understand that we as a port authority are not the owner of most of the companies, of course. So we are a land lease port. We manage waterways. We build quays, but we do not operate the terminals ourselves. But that does not mean that we don't also look for port-wide connectivity. But that's that later. Maybe the next slide, please. So here you see, for example, where where port-wide connectivity might be the case, for example, with regard to drone operations. As a port authority, we started a drone airspace management pilot like 2 years ago. We perform inspection flights with drones. We also are the organizers of a drone ecosystem where we, with customers, want to test, for example, BVLOS flights. So I can imagine that if MNO public connectivity is not sufficient for these activities, a private network could be considered here. Next slide, please. Another possible use case is autonomous transport of so-called terminal tractors through our container exchange route. You can see it in the blue lines on the left. That's on the outermost part of the port, the Maasvlakte, where we constructed a route through the port between the different container terminals and the empty depots for an efficient exchange of containers, because many containers have to be exchanged from different terminals altogether to get where they want to go. And since this route logically runs through different plots of lands, through different customers, and it has requirements for autonomous vehicles are very high, a private network could also be a possible application here. Next slide, please.
And Jeffrey, here we're looking at 5 container terminals, right?
Yeah, 5 container terminals, and they have also deep empty depots where empty containers are being stored.
2 of which already have private wireless. So again, things are really happening, folks.
Then I want to discuss more in depth what our customers are doing now at the moment. So as you can see here in the picture, much of the activity is focused on a limited piece of the area of the port, so the Maasvlakte area. Here you find the combination of the 4 deep sea container terminals, the container exchange route, which you can see in the blue. And there are also several chemical plants, refineries, and biorefineries, all in the same closed area. From the deep sea terminals, most of them already requested frequency space from the national authority. And there are also some warehouses and distribution centers, all in the same area. Next slide, please. So what should you be thinking of in this specific area with this specific clients? And please don't worry about all the text here, the high density of the text in the next slides. Those are mainly for reading afterwards, and that gives you all a possibility to get in touch with us to talk into more detail about this subject. But if you look at the container terminals, of course, these activities are characterized by 24/7. Highly mission-critical crane movements, automated vehicles. So this requires, of course, a very good connectivity across the whole area. And that's complicated by the environment, of course, because there are many steel structures, the containers, of course, water planes, so that makes it it's quite difficult. Next slide, please. And then you also have the refinery and the chemical sector. We see them running at a bit lower speed with implementing 5G or asking out for frequency space. But we notice that they are making preparations for the rollout of their private networks. And they are also requesting already frequency space for this. And what we also notice is that most of the time they speak of like a reference model being rolled out from their headquarters, and the headquarters are mainly not based in the Netherlands, so that's abroad in the US, for example, or in Germany. And then they consider if that reference model is able to being applied in the Port of Rotterdam as well. But that's more for the future. Next slide.
You see it?
So
yeah,
I can see it. That's good. So this landscape which I just sketched is coming with quite some challenges. First of all, of course, there is limited frequency space available. So in addition to that, we expect that because of the companies being located at such a small area, in small proximity to each other, that interference is to be expected between the networks. And another issue is, of course, that the landscape for private frequencies is different from each country. And I already mentioned that the headquarters are being based in other countries, and they want to phase out something which they've thought of in, for example, the US and for Germany, and then it's not applicable directly for the Netherlands. So that's also an issue. And that could be the case that a plant located in Rotterdam is on a lower lower ranking for modernization or investments. So that's really an issue. Next slide.
Oh, one too far, I guess. Huh? No? This one? Is this it?
No, that's fine. Yeah. So the question for us is, of course, how do we relate to this all from the perspective of a port authority? What should be our role? So first of all, of course, we are an area manager, and we want to ensure optimal digital connectivity for all the clients, and also for our own activities, for an optimal business climate and for future competitiveness, of course. So that's the reason why we are actively participating in the policy discussion. So that's the first thing. But we also try to study, to inventorize the needs of their customers and other port users. And partly on the basis of this study, we can bundle questions and issues towards regulating authorities. For example, we can ask about how to mutual coordinate different private networks, or ask about the legal implications of cross-plot or cross-company network services. So that we also can do, like as a port authority. But we can also use the knowledge to challenge mobile network operators, of course, regarding their services. Are there any services for these customers in the port? But also questions regarding coverage. The Maasvlakte there, it's not densely populated, of course, so it's not a high priority for public providers to provide coverage there. But on the other hand, we have an own fiber network, so we can provide investing leverage, for example, for providers to use our fiber network for an access point, or we can provide antenna mounting points. That's also a role we can take as a port authority. And finally, as the next and final slides shows, we are also participating in research pilots. For example, like the dynamic spectrum management sharing pilot in the 3.8, 4.2 gigahertz band. And here we want to see whether private use can coexist with existing satellite users in the central part of the Netherlands. So I think I will leave it as is. So I hope I have not used enough of the time.
Thanks, Jeffrey. This was a short intro into the largest port of Europe. And as Jeffrey articulated, I'll just repeat, 5 container terminals, 28 refineries, and Jeffrey, in total, 3,000 business customers. Am I right?
Yeah, okay, but then you also have the really small companies, of course.
Including many small ones. Meanwhile, we now have Willem Blom online. As I said in the introduction, Willem is the Spectrum Manager for Airport of Amsterdam, also named Schiphol, which some may find difficult to pronounce. Do I now click back, Marie? Yeah, I'll click back through all these. Oh, hang on. Where's Willem? Ah, there he is. Willem, floor is yours.
Going out, going in, going out, going in. Can you understand me?
I think there's a bit of garbling. No, it's looking at the technicians. It's doable.
No? What's the problem?
No, it's getting better. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah? Okay. Okay. Yes, I think that, that a lot of things are said in the presentation of the Rotterdam. Because we also are an airport, but we are a port. In logistics, we are the same. But first, let me introduce myself. Then look what is Schiphol and what we do. And then what will bring the future for private 5G. Next slide, please. Now, Willem Blom, I'm advisor, manager. I'm advisor manager 8Control, one of the few managers from spectrum managers in the world for an airport. Because I understand that there are not a lot of them. I'm spectrum manager, and we look at spectrum for harmonize the ether at the airport and for no collisions in radio equipment. Next slide, please.
Whilst we click through the slides, by the way, the audience is welcome to submit questions. So please do submit your questions. Sorry for interrupting. Willem, go ahead.
No problem, no problem. Schiphol, yes, we are Schiphol. I'm from the Schiphol Group, the Royal Schiphol Group. The Royal Schiphol operates in Amsterdam, but we are owner of Rotterdam, Den Haag Airport, and Lelystad. Lelystad is not working at the moment, but from those airports. We are a major stakeholder in Eindhoven, and we have interest in Brisbane, Hobart, and we are managing the terminal and real estate from the Terminal 4 or JFK in New York. That's what the Royal Schiphol Group does. We also the 5G policy, what we roll out for Airport Amsterdam. We will also roll out for Rotterdam, Den Haag, and Lelystad, and in the future also Eindhoven. Next slide, please. Yeah, what we do, what is our policy?
You want
have
next
our
one?
Airport. Yes?
You want this one?
No question.
No?
Okay. No, back.
Okay,
One back. We wrote what I want to do with this slide is that when you look at it, we focus. Schiphol Airport is focusing on creating value for society and economy. That is what we do. Next slide, please. These are the figures. Maybe you don't think it's we do a lot. But it is the figures what we do at Schiphol 2023. And also we do a lot of investment at Schiphol in building and also in the networks. Next slide, please. 16 square kilometers, about 10 square miles is our area. And we want to have a 5G communication platform in the complete area of the 16 square kilometers. That's a lot smaller than the port of Rotterdam, but we are an airport and not a great haven zoals Rotterdam. Next slide, please. Some statements that I have seen on the internet. The first one tells us that 5G is also necessary for connectivity in the future. And we at Schiphol see also that we must do that for the connectivity. And also our provider, KPN, has made a statement that 5G is the foundation for digitalization. And that's strange because he is a provider. He has another goal. He must sell tickets. But they also see that 5G, private 5G, that we need for a platform at Schiphol Airport and also in other airports, I think. Next slide, please. What we're going to do in the future? In the future, we are thinking on autonomous airport operations. And what we want to do is we will make sustainable taxiing that will be with electrical vehicles. We do autonomous buses. We want to go docking and pushbacks, also electrical, but also an omnibus. Dus not with the driver in it, but the pilot will do it himself. We also do all that kind of things at the moment, but it is not complete autonomous at the moment. Dus dit are the things what we want to do. Yes, next slide, please. These are what we do at the moment. This is our first project. We are making POCs for autonomous airport. We look at operation, how we must do that. We look for a health place, what we can do, and we also look for a better labor situation on the airport, but also we are thinking that we have a labor shortage in the future. This is also why we want to do this autonomous airport. Next slide, please. Some vehicles that are prepared for autonomous airport. We have new crash cameras at this moment. They can drive autonomous, but not completely on 4G. They need 5G. And also we want to have that on a private 5G because the pictures that comes out of the crash tenders and all vehicles that it's on the picture may not be out of Schiphol. It is all classified as security. And that's why we need a 5G network. We also have package systems at the moment that can drive autonomous and pushbacks taxi vehicles. And this week we have bought by MAN 64 electrical buses, what also can drive completely autonomous when we have the technology in place. Next slide, please. What have we done? Yeah, we have done some the bus routes, what intelligent bus routes, but have we no more. This is for the road, what we have done from 2000 to 2023, 2020 to 2023. We have done some POCs, we have done some onboard drone experiments. At an airport is a drone a difficult thing because our law tells us that a drone may not fly at the airport. It's difficult. This is what we have done. Next slide, please. Now, what we can, this is a slide where we look at the ecosystem of our building with autonomous airports. We look at the government. We are a Schiphol Group, but we also need the airlines and the handlers. That's a problem that Rotterdam has at the moment. There are a lot of users of 5G or want to do 5G or look for other systems. We want to do it with all those together with one 5G platform where they all can use the platform for their own facilities, for their own systems. This is why we want to make a group of users, and we also have a lot of users. That's the only way we can make a platform 5G. Next slide, please. Okay, we have seen what we have done, and now what we're going to do. First, we had the permit. In 2024, in January, we have the permit for 50 megahertz on the upper side of the band. And then we have done a mini tender. The mini tender, what we have done, we have choose Ericsson for the next 2 years to get us 5G, private 5G platform with everything what is necessary for it. Also the run and that kind of thing for the next 5 years so that we can do some POCs and that kind of thing. In August is the first 5G installation on air. It's the first of 4, I think. And that was necessary because the permits that we had must be activated within 6 months. Dus we have in January we had the permit, in August we have the installation in place. We also are busy to make the users groups. The slide before you can see that we have some users groups. We want to make users group to get them all in the same 5G area. But we are busy with it. We do not know how we're going to do it completely, but we want to make a group for the business 5G. Then we're going to make some use cases. We have a lot of use cases, so for the fire trucks, but also for our KLM and handlers. This is what we're going to do next year, coming year and next year. Then is for the 2 years is the contract with Ericsson is done, and then we go for a complete new roadmap and a new tender for a complete system for the 16 square kilometers we have at Schiphol. But we are on air, we are busy, it is coming, and it is also, we need it, and we need more space. This is also a discussion we have with our economics and our law at the moment. Next slide, please.
Kun je hem langzaamaan afronden, Willem, vanwege de tijd?
Yes, I'm the last slide. But are you ready to join our mission? Because we need people and we need companies that can, for the next few years, can provide us with knowledge and that kind of thing. This is my presentation.
Thank you, Willem. So that was an insight into the plans and current status with regards to 5G for a large airport. Next, we have Rory presenting us a couple of use cases, still main ports in predominantly America, right? So, Rory, go ahead. By the way, guys, file your questions. These people are Dutch. They're not shy. They can take it. So can the Irish.
Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Rory O'Toole. I am based in Ireland, which is the HQ of Druid. We have a global presence. We have about 5,000 deployments done so far, instances of the Ramus platform. Ramus actually stands for Radio Emissary, which some people always ask us, what does it mean? And that solution then is integrated to over 50 RAN vendors as well. So we kind of pride ourselves on having done that amount of deployments, but the reason we've done so many is because we've been in business for about 23 years. So we started off actually in the aviation sector, putting private networks into aviation, and then we moved to healthcare, and then we moved into doing things like network in a box and defense, and then doing full private 4G and 5G networks. And today we really focus mainly on, I suppose, 5G, although we can deploy 5G, 4G, 3G and 2G on the same instance of software. So although we can actually scale very, very high, actually we also pride ourselves in the fact that we can scale extremely low. So we can get a private network onto a single server. We've even done things like Raspberry Pi. We've put a private network into the palm of people's hands. And we've done NIBs and first responder systems for defense and for firefighting, things like that. But we do tend to focus on the use case. 5G is really just like Wi-Fi on steroids. So we always find ourselves having to focus on the use case, and any customer who comes to us always has something that we haven't seen before. So we tend to do a lot of customizations then for the customers. We do focus on doing things in line with 3GPP, of course, because we have to be standardized. But at the same time, we have to be very flexible because it's the use case in the end that are really driving the 5G adoption. And the final thing I'd really say is that we do see 5G about to enter into a kind of a hockey stick moment where there's going to be a lot of industry deploying 5G. All of the barriers that were there in the past, bit by bit, are beginning to come down. There's still an issue with spectrum and the way that governments handle that. But we do think that things are changing. We can see enterprises beginning to realize that it's an affordable technology, that it really works, it really delivers for them, and it's a huge improvement over Wi-Fi. Although Wi-Fi will still persist, and in tandem, both technologies will be totally complementary, but we see 5G as really, it's just entering its shining moment. So,
this is your first sheet. Can you
roll on?
Roll on a bit, because I know there's more coming.
Yeah, there's more coming, yeah. So just, I have the clicker, sorry, apologies. So airport use cases, we'll just focus, although we have a lot of industry verticals done, and we actually have addressed pretty much all of the industry verticals, from mining to ports to healthcare to Industry 4.0, AI applications at the back, drones, etc. Airports themselves actually present a whole myriad of use cases, almost limitless really. From air traffic control use cases, from video surveillance to handling people moving through the airport, to helping with check-in, to tracking luggage going through, lost luggage, all of that. So we'll just go into 2 of the use cases here quickly. I won't go into all of the use cases because it's just too many. This particular one is in Dallas-Fort Worth. We delivered this with a partner of ours called Betacom. Nokia radio was used in the case, and the Druid core was deployed. The particular challenge that they had, although DFW is a very, very innovative airport operator, and they want to kind of be seen as that as well. So they tried to get ahead of the curve here, putting in 5G. But the particular challenge they had was Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi for the airport really was holding them back. There was too much contention on the network, particularly with the Wi-Fi was shared with people coming into the airport, and at peak demand times they were finding that their own critical comms infrastructure at the back end and their processes and procedures, the things that they had connected in, were not able to work correctly with too much contention on the Wi-Fi. So they asked us to come on board with Betacom and implement a secure high-speed 5G network. So that particular use case that they focused on first was around actually asset tracking for bags and the baggage tracking. So they put in the 5G network there, used high-definition cameras, etc., and they were able to track then the bags going through. So they were able to try and eliminate, they never do eliminate totally, but certainly a huge improvement on lost luggage, tracking of assets going through the airport. And so there was a big improvement for them there. The next one, this is Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport. Now this airport's actually quite large. It's on a footprint of about 3,200 acres, a massive site. There's 86,000 people employed in the airport and the environs. It's a huge hub as well for people going through. There's 25 million people go through this yearly. There's also Amazon use it, UPS, etc. All the major distributors use this as a hub, and they again were finding a very similar problem actually around the Wi-Fi. It just was not fit for purpose in a rapidly expanding airport. So they needed to do something about that, and they looked to CTS, and they implemented the Druid core then to enable a huge amount of use cases actually. So they started off just implementing the actual system to try and get sensors and monitoring devices connect into it. But they ended up then with a solution that gave them a huge amount of upsides. So one example was the FAA Part 139 compliance. So this is for things like where the airport has to meet certain compliance around maintenance for aircraft, and by putting in high definition cameras, they were able to track parts movage around that. They were able to track work that was done. If you imagine even checking things like rivets on airplanes as they come in from maintenance, you can hook that up with AI and tools like that, and you can really help the workers. Although we're worried about people losing their jobs to AI, I'd be in the camp that I think actually AI will create jobs for humans. It'll simply just free them up to do higher level tasks. And we will see that over time. Any major new technology tends to increase the amount of jobs and the kind of higher spec jobs for workers. So the other things they've done is they've implemented connectivity for queues carts. So queues carts are things like if you imagine the food carts on aircraft, but also specifically they have carts in place for checking in people. So you'd have a laptop on the cart, you'd have keyboards, other connected devices, but they can be fully mobile. So as demand increases or you have peak traffic around Christmas time, etc., they can bring in a whole load more check-in carts, and they can process more people through the airport. And none of that requires physical cabling other than power. It can be actually battery powered as well. So all of these devices can be moved around. This was a critical thing that 5G gave to the airport, was the ability to reduce cabling and also enable mobility of all devices. And it's something that's kind of underlooked a bit on 5G, is that real mobility use case over Wi-Fi. The other thing that they were able to improve was...
Being rude, can you wrap up the next ones? I know it's rude, but we're always fighting with time.
Yep, sure. Yeah. So digital science, video surveillance, critical infrastructure monitoring, mobile enterprise applications. There's a whole host of applications that they were able to bring on board just by deploying 5G technology. So as I said at the start, it isn't really the 5G technology, it's the applications at the end, but both have to work together in great synchronicity to bring the use cases live. So that's pretty much it in terms of the Druid.
Thanks for that, Rory. So that was an insight into another continent. By the way, for the audience in America, you're talking CBRS, which is a harmonized spectrum scheme across all 50 states of the United States. That's something that in Europe we can only dream of. Next is Boris from Obvious, and with Boris we'll take a bit of a wider look at logistics. So, you need a clicker from him. So Boris will articulate a couple of use cases that are not main ports, but logistics at large. Boris, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think after the three presentations we had showing wide area coverage use cases, I think we can kind of in our presentation zoom in on some smaller area use cases or use cases in small areas, which could be, for example, customers or users or warehouses in the port of Rotterdam. Yeah. So just before I describe our use cases, I'll give a short introduction about our company. So as Koen introduced just before, we are a provider of core network. So we are, as a particularity, we are a pure provider of pure 5G SA core networks, because we believe really in the key advantage and unique advantage of these technologies. You know, it's 5G SA brings a couple of innovations which are really critical, especially if organizations want to deploy quickly and in an agile way small networks in very quick fashion in companies. Yeah. So 5G SA is a key enabler for this. And so we are a provider of these 5G SA core networks, and we pride ourselves also to provide, it's mentioned here, sort of additional security module that can help people to ensure critical cybersecurity in their premises and for their networks. And so I will now start with the first kind of use case we have done with the SNCF. So we have deployed a private 5G core network, and we have helped actually to deploy the complete network in the technical maintenance center of Rennes, and which is from which you see the pictures here. And the SNCF has, I would say, validated and selected key use cases after the duration of the project, which they deem very useful for them on private 5G. So the first has these. This is a maintenance technical center. This is a center for maintenance of trains. So obviously they do maintenance. So meaning they will use their private and domestic applications on mobile handsets to make the to ensure maintenance of the train. So, for example, validating on some location of the trains identifying, I would say, some place of the trains which seems to them not really in good shape or not in critical situation. So they use this. This is a first use case. Second use case is, of course, mission critical services. So MCX kind of services for the personal inside on the technical center area. And the third application is the geofencing so the GPS-based geofencing of the train when they are in the area of the technical center. And the fourth is another application which seems very interesting for the SNCF is the inspection of trains with video cameras. So when they typically enter at some well-defined spots when they enter or they move around the technical center. And what's important here is, of course, the private 5G is used for reliable and wide area coverage connectivity. I can give you, for example, just this figure for these. So we have not deployed. We are not covering the whole outside area. We are covering around 1/3 of this area, but we are covering the indoor that you see, and to cover the indoor and the outdoor, we just need three G-Node Bs, so three antennas, working on the B38 band, so 2.6 gigahertz, and on 20 megahertz band. So that's just show you what the quality of the private 5G coverage ensures here. Second use case, second kind of use case. These are the use cases that you can see typically in a warehouse, where we did with logistic partners. So it's not a warehouse as such, but it's a provider of warehouse logistics solutions for warehouse. And what they tested, the feedback is that. Of course, so they use private 5G for this reliable coverage quality indoor and outdoor. They use it for item scanning. So typically having a small handheld appliance used for barcode reading, which is used outdoor and indoor. They use it for AMR piloting, so robot piloting inside the warehouse. And they use it also for tracking and geolocalization. And just as an extension to show you that logistics is also relevant in other kind of environments, I just wanted to show you what we did for this wonderful project. I like this project because it's a Franco-German project, and we show here. What can be the advantage of using private 5G in operating rooms for logistics? In other words, if you have, private 5G can be used to pilot AMR, and many people don't know it, but AMR are very relevant in hospitals. And the feedback we got from the personnel we are talking to is that in AMR is used typically to convey surgical materials, surgical tools, or maybe towels or kind of things like this, from the storage room to the to the operating room. And you may not know, but I think you know now, but personal shortage is a very critical issue in hospitals, and in this way they can relieve this issue. And I would be at the end of my presentation, and we have 2 minutes for the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Boris. So this was a wider look at logistics. We've seen a lot of main ports and airports and seaports, and Boris gave us a bit of a look at logistics at large. With the organizer, we had a bit of a time overrun because some of the presentations were a minute longer, but then again, exactly, we looked at some very salient, important cases. So with the organizers, I agreed we can take 5 more minutes. If there's questions, if there is any, I hope there is. Again, these people can take it, ask your questions. How many containers are handled per day? Wow, Jeffrey, that's one for you. Your voice is off.
I can count them.
No. I know a large container ship contains 20,000 containers, right?
Yeah, that's 20 feet equivalent, so you have to divide it by 2.
Okay, yeah, 2. Sorry guys, we don't have that figure. I'll quickly rush through a few. Boris, for the indoor coverage of the SNCF use case, so the maintenance plant, what is the surface area of the warehouse? Oh, people want figures.
Well, I've been there. I don't have the figure, but I would say something like it's big. It's I would say it's 20 meters wide and 50 meters long, something like this.
The indoor plus the outdoor.
Yeah,
the 3 BTSs.
So that's the indoor.
Yeah,
that's the indoor. And then so you have to figure out. Typically, one typical train
has to fit in.
Has to fit in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not the whole TGV. Huh?
Yeah. I arrived at Gare du Nord yesterday. Train can be pretty long, huh?
Yeah.
I quickly rushed through. That is still the question on the surface. Other questions, Marie? Unlike traditional 5G, where mainly only Ericsson, Huawei, and Nokia have complete portfolio, good observation, private 5G has enormous number of vendors. Very true. We've already seen 4 core vendors here. So yeah. Can you reflect on that? Well, that's a topic in its own right. But yeah, the ecosystem is very vivid, very lively. The ecosystem is broken down in core and run. There's multiple core vendors. We've had 4 of them here. There's plenty of run vendors. There's new run vendors appearing, well, Rory, am I right? Just about every day. So yeah, the ecosystem is huge, which is a benefit. So the market has gotten out of this lockup of only 3 dominant vendors. Any comment from your end?
What I'd say, not all private core vendors are the same.
I didn't say that.
we have some.
There's many.
Yeah. We've got some. I mean, we've been in the business for 23 years, so we have huge amount of features developed on the core. And as I said, it's the use cases in the end that make the success for the customer. So we've had to develop a huge amount of features that are not necessarily standard features. So you will actually find that a lot of core vendors are actually quite different, and it's probably why there are so many. You can get into the area with open source software, but that will only get you so far. So there's many of those. But when you come to the top ones, there's only a few actually who are really able to deliver the top use cases.
So back to the question, the good news is that there's a large ecosystem to choose from. Run, core, of course you got system integrators, you got enterprise service providers, you got the hyperscalers. So there's a whole ecosystem to choose from, which is good. The difficulty on the enterprise side is, of course, well, if you're not terribly familiar with 5G, that's a study in its own right. But basically, good news, I would say. Were there other questions that are worth addressing? No, there were not. Okay, then we're at the end of this presentation. We're going to hold a break, and in 10 minutes we'll continue with yet another session on end-user cases with Peter, and then we'll be looking at manufacture and mining. To wrap up this session, we've seen 2 large main ports, both of them from the Netherlands, no denying, Rotterdam and Schiphol, who are both embarking on a private 5G strategy. Rory has shown us a couple of cases from America. Boris has shown us, well, the wider look at logistics, because there's more than just main ports, there's a hell of a lot more. And the good news is, this is the message I want to leave with you folks, things are real, things are happening. As we speak, networks are being built. This is not academic, this is for real. Thanks for your attention, and up to the next speaker in panel in 10 minutes, right? Thank you.
Thank you all.